There have been hundreds of men and women who have been employed by Total Nonstop Action, the wrestling company. Some of these people were unfortunately ones you'd like to forget, like Cheeks, or the Johnsons, or Mike Tenay. You'll likely recall Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Kevin Nash spending time in Dixieland, but plenty of other big names have been forgotten to the sands of time. Fear not, former legends and heroes of wrestling, now is your time to shine. I'm Andrew with WhatCulture, and let's look back at 10 wrestlers you didn't know were in TNA. Number 10, CM Punk. A young kid from Chicago with the birth name CM Punk was exposed to a small but national audience in September of 2002. He was cast as a lackey of Ravens along with Alexis Lurie, the future Mickie James. Now there's a fascinating alternate history out there somewhere with Punk spending his entire career in TNA. But in this one, a backstage fight with Teddy Hart outside the White Trash Cafe did him in and led him to leaving the company, and yes, that really was the name of the cafe. Amazingly, it was Sabu, of all people, who was the voice of reason and broke up the fight. How ridiculous do things need to be when Sabu is the only adult in the room? Number 9, Dusty Rhodes. That's right, Daddy-O. Dusty Rhodes used to be funky like a monkey down in TNA. He actually competed in 18 matches when the company was running weekly pay-per-views. Among the legends he faced were Vince Russo and Disco Inferno. Historians often put those feuds right up there with his battles with Flair. As TNA grew, Dusty moved into an on-air authority figure role and became the director of operations, as well as the head booker behind the scenes. He conducted all of his business from a pickup truck. A feud then commenced between Trinity and Tracy Brooks over who got to be his personal assistant, so it's a really good thing that the booking power didn't go to his head. Rhodes lasted about 6 months in the role before he was removed from Power, and after that he drove his pickup truck off into the sunset and into WWE, this time without polka dots. Number 8, Diamond Dallas Page. For 4 months, the king of Bada Bing joined Total Nonstop Action to help out the little company that could. He was there during their Friday afternoon show era, which is why most people don't remember his run. A couple years after DDP left WWE, he surprisingly unretired and joined up with TNA to reignite his WCW feud with Raven. Then he moved on to the main event scene to battle Jeff Jarrett because that's what every big name from WCW and WWE was contractually obligated to do. Page only had 9 matches in the company, and once Dusty Rhodes was ousted from Power, he left too. His last match on a national stage was teaming up with Ron Killings in a losing effort to Monty Brown and the Outlaw. Did you feel the bang from that one? No? Yeah, I didn't either. Still, it beats losing to Sarah Undertaker. Number 7, Test. In 2006, Andrew Martin was released from WWE for the second time. His physical appearance should have raised red flags to anyone who saw him, but instead he was rewarded with a nice big push in ECW. To the surprise of nobody who was paying attention, he failed a wellness policy test and soon left the company. 6 months passed and then he showed up in TNA somehow looking even bigger. He joined up with Sting and Abyss to take on AJ Styles, Christian and Tomko at Hard Justice in a Doomsday Chamber of Blood match. I have no idea what that match is. Anyway, it was one and done for Martin and TNA. After the pay-per-view, someone finally came to their senses and told him they couldn't have him on the roster due to his physique. Congress was looking into professional wrestling at the time because of the Benoit murders, and TNA obviously didn't want that attention, so they let him go, but unfortunately, Martin never cleaned up, and he passed away 2 years later at the age of 34. Number 6, Lex Luger. Let's try to be a little less morbid here and have fun. While the Lex Express completely missed out on the invasion angle in 2001 after WCW went out of business, that bus soon sputtered into the TNA parking lot for one night in 2003. Luger was a big name during the Monday Night War, but it felt kind of sleazy at the time for TNA to bring him in, because earlier that year, Luger made headlines after his girlfriend Miss Elizabeth overdosed in his house. Okay, that's pretty morbid. The sole match Luger took part in was teaming up with Jeff Jarrett to take on AJ Styles and his good buddy Sting. While Luger's physique was still impressive, his wrestling skills weren't so hot. He basically posed and threw a few punches, which, now that I think of it, was kind of 90% of his offense anyway. Number 5, Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper showed up a few times in the early days of TNA. He had a couple of Piper Pit interviews, in the Pit with Piper segments, and even brought in his old friend, WWE Hall of Famer and renowned murderer Jimmy Snuka for one of them. But in one of the most uncomfortable moments in wrestling history, one night in 2003, Piper really had it out for Vince Russo. TNA officials thought that Piper was going to talk about his book, but then he quickly went off script and called out Russo, who he worked with briefly in WCW. Piper was ridiculously out of line and accused the writer of killing Owen Hart. It had nothing to do with the rest of the show or any angle that was going on. If you do remember Piper at all from TNA, it's probably because of that night. And hey, fun fact, during Piper's promo, he tore apart WWE style of entertainment, referencing a man in a thong sticking his butt in other people's faces. He said there wasn't enough money for him to do something like that. So what did Piper do when he went back to WWE the next year? Yep, he took a stink face. Number 4, Vader. Vader time in the WWF was pretty forgettable, but it was like Steve Austin's run in the Attitude Era compared to his time in TNA. In February of 2003, Vader joined up with Dusty Rhodes in TNA to battle the evil Harris brother twins, because apparently you need 2 of the all-time greats to stop Skull and 8-Ball. The match went about 7 minutes with some bionic elbows dished out and a Vader bomb on Sonny Siaki for good measure. And after that, actually that was it for Vader and the company. Everyone was pretty much fine with this decision as TNA brought in a much hotter free agent the following week, D'Lo Brown. Number 3, Jake Roberts. In 2006, long before Jake Roberts started DDP Yoga and cleaned up his life, he appeared at Bound for Glory, TNA's biggest show of the year, to referee a Monsters Ball match. His first night in, he cut a lengthy promo that was so wildly rambling and so hard to hear that it had to be cut down to mere seconds. According to former TNA employee Bill Behrens, it's because Roberts was coked out of his mind that night. Could TNA even trust Roberts to count to 3? Somehow, Roberts made it to Bound for Glory and didn't even bother to wear a referee shirt. Well, at least he remembered to wear pants. He showed up one more time 2 years later as a groomsman in Jay Lethal's wedding. While Roberts may be a legend, his TNA run was incredibly forgettable. Actually, it would be surprising if even he remembered it. Number 2, the Road Warriors. The WWF let the Road Warriors go in 1999 after the incredibly successful angle where Hawk attempted suicide. The Warriors then showed up in TNA in 2002 with something to prove. They went to help Dusty Rhodes and Jeff Jarrett battle Triple X and Vince Russo. As a side note, Animal decided to wear a singlet that night for reasons that will never be known. Okay, so it was probably to cover up his gut. But unfortunately, due to the interference of Mr. Wrestling 4, the Road Warriors lost their match and left the company. Oh, what a disappointment. Number 1, Randy Savage. In 2004, TNA wanted to get some buzz going for their monthly pay-per-views. It was a big step, so the company signed a big name to appear. Their second show had Randy Savage scheduled to team up with Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles to battle the Evil Kings of Wrestling, which consisted of Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Jeff Jarrett, so basically NWO 2000 without Scott Steiner and Bret Hart. But in the main event, Savage didn't even start the match with his team, and then finally 15 minutes in, he emerged, walking out with the speed of your grandma heading to a garage sale. He didn't even remove his shirt and looked noticeably smaller since we last saw him in Spider-Man. All he did was throw a couple of punches and then just sat on Jeff Jarrett to pin him. According to our good friend, TNA employee Bill Behrens, Savage had been drinking all day and had to be helped up to the entryway, which explains it quite a bit. Seeing Savage in such a condition was like a top rope elbow drop to our hearts. So maybe it's just best left forgotten, and I'm sorry for bringing it up. Well, that's the list. Is there any forgettable runs in TNA that we missed? Sound off below, and thanks for watching. I'm Andrew with WhatCulture. You can follow me at Andrew Sojek on Twitter. Subscribe to our channel, and we will never forget you.